Hey, episode number 3. So today we're going to have a look at a little bit of metal work that I started. As you can see, we talked about the tires and stuff, and I got all the tires on. Matt gave me a note to say make sure that the tire axis here is actually not in the center of the wheel well, which is true because the Yodas are pushed forward a bit. Now, I started on the metalwork for this, and it was really annoying, I'm not going to lie. What I actually did is I took this single piece of tube. So, I'm using this tube here, which is a 3/16 solid carbon tube. And I like this stuff because an M3 screw fits in the end pretty nice. And it bends really well, and it welds really well, and there's no dirt or copper or anything in it, so it's a nice tube. And what I did is I took a 6-foot piece of tube and I started at the back here, and I centered the tube on the back of the buggy here, kind of, lined it up, eyeballed most of the same distance on each side. And then I started my bends here on the sides, and the way that I did that was with this typical, tube bender. This is just a generic, I don't know, I think it's for brake line or something, but it's a typical hardware store sort of tube bender. And it's got 3 different sizes in it, so you can use the 1/8 here, 3/16, 1/4 inch size. And it's really easy to use. One of the things I will say about it is that it doesn't necessarily give you the copying precision that you think you're going to get. So, if you say to yourself, well, I need a bend here, and you put the tube bender on, and when you start bending the tube, you're putting it in straight, and then you bend it along the radius here. Sometimes the tube stretches out a little bit. Sometimes the way the curve ends up doesn't always happen where you think it's going to happen, and that's a problem. So my recommendation is that when you're doing tube, make sure you always have extra at the end, because you might have to trim the end off to get the actual height of your tube to fit properly. Now, this is actually a template that I've been saving from my Jeep JK 2-door builds for, 4 years. So I use this to build the tube that goes from the dash up the windshield over the driver's area and back down to the tail. So that's my template. Now, the problem with this setup here is that I wanted a single piece of tube all the way around the entire buggy. And because of that problem, I couldn't make a one-side template and then just lay them together and copy the angles. I had to actually start at the back and do one side and the other side and back and forth. And so I came up with a couple of tricks for that. One of them was I got this old envelope, and what I did is I drew the shape of one side onto the envelope like this. I kind of copied the shape on it into this, where the tube was. I marked it both sides, and then I was able to take this piece and use it on the other side to copy it over. You know what I mean? So instead of having a separate piece on each side that was joined at the back eventually, what I did is I just made a paper template. I did one side, I was happy with how it looked. And then I did this wheel arch, I was happy with how that looked, and then I moved on to these other sections of the buggy. Now, I guess I don't know why I'm calling it a buggy, because it's definitely going to be a truck. But, I think whenever I start doing tube work, I start thinking custom buggy builds, I don't know why. So this setup here is really designed to protect the body. It's also designed to get my Sorca points, so I need metal sliders. I want fender coverage, so this actually gives me, this part here will actually give me the tread block coverage for the rear tire. I'll try to show that off in the video here. You can see there that the tire is kind of outside the body by about 1/4 of a lug. And with the metal tube, now I'm actually covered, so I'll end up with the full tire tuck that I would want for Adventure Series or wherever else that actually matters. Now, one of the things I did want to do with this is I wanted it to be sort of a body locator structural kind of a part as well. So I eventually got the tube to come up on both sides here all the way around. It was, I'm not going to lie, it was an enormous pain in the rear, okay? All of these bends here, they're too small for this. So I'll show you what I use for those bends. I'll give you a bit of a close-up here of the tube detail so you can kind of see this big bend here. I did this one with the blue tube bender because that was fine. And then when you start getting into these here small bends, they're actually too small of a radius to make use of this big tube bender. So what I did is I used this make your own tube bender here. This is just a block of wood and a vise, and I stuck 2 big wood screws in it kind of pretty far down and then clamped the vise to keep the wood from splitting. And so this basically all you're doing is putting your tube in there, and then you're just going to bend it around, right? So you're forcing on it until you get an arc the way that you want. You can see I kind of drew some lines on here. So what I ended up doing was I cut a couple of these. I got this thing worked out, and when I kind of got this curve here worked out, I drew it on here. And then I turned the entire tube, I turned the entire thing upside down, and I redrew the same arc on the other side, so that when I was bending the left side of the truck, it would actually match. You see, you can kind of see there's a symmetry there. So basically what I was doing was saying to myself, here's my flat spot that I want on my tube, and then I want the flat spot to go into this arc here that was already pre-bent. And then my new bend is going to be here, so I'm going to line up this line here, and then when I get it to this point, I'm going to bend the tube around until it matches this new line right here, right? So that's kind of how that works. And that was actually part of this whole thing. I think that was actually this bottom bend right here, this way. So that's kind of where that came from, right there. You can kind of see where the marks are on the paper. So yeah, that's kind of how I did these tight bends. And then it was a huge pain to actually get them both to line up, properly at the same time, because in the front, what I'm going to try to do in the front is get the winch mounted up here. I will take out this section of tube that's right here. Right now I actually put a little M3 set screw in between the joints. It turns out that metric 3 size is the exact size to fit into this tube. So you can easily join the two pieces together here. Just drop that in there if I can with one hand. And not really working. Well, it gives you an idea. So basically the set screw will go in there, and then it just kind of slides in if I got the burr out of the way. And then this part here will connect to the other tube. So what I've done is I've just stuffed a set screw in between the two ends. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to put the winch up here. This is going to get cut out. I think what I'm probably going to end up doing is once I'm done mounting the body onto here, I'm going to put little magnet tabs underneath. So because of the way this tube is set up here, I've got this nice flat spot inside the fender here. And what I think I'm going to do is put a little metal tab, and then a magnet, 2 magnets, or those ring magnets there, and then I'll be able to just drop the body right onto the truck, down. The tube work is going to be bolted onto the cage. The cage work is going to be separate from the frame. The outside rim tube work and the sliders and all that, that's going to be separate from the frame. But they'll all be able to bolt together. So my goal is that the body shell will just slide right over top of the whole thing, and that will make battery changes really easy and stuff too. You can just lift the shell and go. And it should be magnet mounted probably in these fender corners. I'll probably do a couple more in the back here somewhere to keep it located, but on the sides I actually bent the tube to fit down the door panel here, And then right there where that little tiny silver dot is, that's where the tiny bend is. And then the tube actually works its way back outwards underneath this little step plate here. So, and then by working its way outwards, I can actually follow the inside of the fender contour here and then all the way around. So, the winch plate will probably have these pieces bent down onto it. And then I'll make a little bush guard here so I can get my bush guard points for Sorka. Trying to make as many points for Class 2 as I possibly can. Actually, the truck at the end of the day is probably going to be Class 1 legal except for the tire diameter, but that's the size of the build that I'm looking for, so I kind of wanted to keep that size. Anyway, that's where I'm going with the tube work. There's a lot more to do, of course, because I have yet to do all of the cage work that goes inside. I've got to get all this stuff propped up inside here. The windshield bar is going to come across here, and then I'll have another one at the back, and I'll have the stuff, you know, for my accessories, and I'll start building the floor pan and stuff inside that. No doors, but I think I'm going to do some kind of an opening panel on it somewhere. I think that's one of the Class 0 things that they're looking for this year at Class 0 is to have tire tuck, to have an opening panel. If you have an opening hood, then you have to have a motor that makes sense. I'm not going to cut the hood off of this, at least at this point I'm not going to do that because I want to keep the structural integrity in the front. Although I think the tube work will probably make up for that at the end of the day. So there's a bunch more to do. I think the next thing I'm going to end up doing is actually finishing up the rear bumper here. What I want to do with the back bumper is I want to put an extra tube inside. There's a tiny gap there. You can see I left a little tiny gap in the back. And what I want to do is either make a flat plate there so I can mount some rear lights, or I'm going to fill it with an extra piece of tube. But in any case, the way that this sits on the body here, I'm going to end up with a second tube below this anyway, so it'll be like a double tube sort of rear bumper kind of thing all the way across. And so I think my next operation is going to be to do the rear bumper and then actually set up the metal mounts on it so that this rim tube can actually be mounted onto the chassis, and then I'll know, you know, where to get rid of the rails at the back, because the C-Max rails are 19 inches long, so I've obviously got lots of extra. I'll clip those off, and then once the rim tube is in and mounted to the chassis, I can actually start doing the interior floor pan and cage work stuff and have the body come off and on demand. And that'll really, I think, speed up the build of the rest of the tube, because at this point I think I've been 7 or 8 hours just trying to get this rim tube bent properly to fit, and I was doing it off the truck. So I took the tube work and the body off, and then I just sat it square on the bench. Let me get this out of the way here. So, you know, that's how I did it. And I just had to make sure it would sit flat with the body without having any weird pressure on it, you know, so that this whole thing was actually just sort of a self-contained, you know, self-standing unit. But of course, now it needs to get mounted. So that's probably the next order, and then I'll get into the floor pan and stuff, and the floor pan tube work and support work for that. Now that this the slider stuff is kind of done, I'm really kind of happy with the way that's going, and it'll give me a chance to turn it into a bit of a rolling shell, if you will. Anyway, that's episode 3. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll just keep pressing on here with the metal work and see where we get to next.